Evan had always lived a quiet life. He was the kind of man who woke up before sunrise, put on his boots without a sound, and stepped outside to begin another long day of work. The ranch he lived on was not very big, but it was full of memories. His father had built it. His mother had cared for it. And after they both passed, the ranch became his entire world. People in town knew him as a hard-working cowboy who rarely complained and kept to himself. So when he announced that he was getting married, the whole town was surprised. Evan had never been the type to talk about his personal life, and no one even knew he was seeing someone. But he had met Maya during a supply trip to the city. She was different from anyone he had known. Kind, thoughtful, and curious about everything. She had warm eyes and a gentle voice, but what impressed him most was her honesty. She never pretended to be someone else. She asked questions when she didn't understand something, and she laughed easily, even at small things. Something about her made Evan feel calm. They didn't have a long engagement. Evan didn't want to wait, and Maya didn't want a big event. She only wanted to be with him. Still, word spread fast in their small town. People talked about how Evan was bringing a city girl to a ranch, and they wondered how she would manage. Some people said she would never adjust. Others said she would leave after a few days when she realized the work was too hard. A few people even joked that Evan must have been desperate to bring home someone who didn't know the difference between a saddle and a shovel. Evan ignored the gossip, but Maya heard some of it when she visited the town before the wedding. She didn't show her discomfort, though. She simply stayed close to Evan and let the comments pass. She believed that people judged quickly when they didn't understand something. She also believed that time would show them the truth. The wedding day came quietly. It wasn't a grand affair, just a small ceremony in the meadow near Evan's ranch. The sky was bright, the wind soft, and everything felt peaceful. Maya wore a simple white dress, and Evan wore his cleanest shirt. Their close friends and a few townspeople gathered, though some came only to satisfy their curiosity. As Maya walked toward Evan, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had left behind everything she knew, her city life, her routines, her familiar surroundings. But she also felt confident in her choice. She wasn't marrying the ranch or the town. She was marrying Evan, a man she trusted with her whole heart. The ceremony was beautiful, simple, and pure, just the way they wanted it. The minister spoke warmly, and Evan held Maya's hands with steady strength. When they exchanged vows, both of them smiled with quiet joy. But as the guests moved toward the tables for refreshments, Maya overheard a group of women standing a little distance away. They were whispering loudly enough for others to hear, and their words carried across the open space. "Well, there goes the cowboy's life," one woman said with a laugh. "He married himself a lazy bride." "One lazy bride? More like a delicate doll," another added. "She looks like she has never lifted anything heavier than a handbag." A third woman chimed in. "She'll last maybe a week on that ranch. Poor Evan will be doing double the work." The words stung, not because they were loud, but because they were spoken with the intention to hurt. They didn't know Maya. They didn't know her heart. They didn't know how much she had prepared herself to begin a new life with Evan. Still, they judged her as if they had watched her entire life unfold. Evan, who had been greeting some guests, turned and saw Maya standing still. He didn't hear the words, but he saw the sadness in her eyes. He walked over to her and gently touched her arm. "You okay?" he asked. Maya smiled, but it was a small, tight smile. "Yes," she replied softly. "Everything's fine." Evan didn't believe her entirely, but he didn't press the matter there. Surrounded by people, throughout the rest of the gathering, Maya kept herself composed. She greeted every guest politely, thanked them for coming, and stayed close to Evan. But the comment kept echoing in her mind. Lazy bride, a stranger's label, given without knowing her story. Later, when the guests left and the sun began to set, Maya and Evan walked together toward the ranch house. The land stretched far on both sides. Golden fields, rolling hills, and the wooden fence that Evan had built years ago. The ranch wasn't perfect. Some parts needed repair, and the barn roof had a few weak spots. But to Maya, it felt like the beginning of something meaningful. When they reached the porch, Evan finally asked gently, "You heard something today, didn't you?" Maya took a slow breath. "Yes," she admitted. "But it's okay." "What did they say?" Maya looked at him with calm eyes. "They called me a lazy bride." She said it without anger, but with clarity. Evan's jaw tightened. He felt a deep discomfort, not because of the insult itself, but because Maya had heard it on a day meant to celebrate their union. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "People here talk too much sometimes." Maya touched his hand. "It doesn't matter. They don't know me. They don't know what I can do." Her voice was steady, even determined. Evan looked at her, noticing the calm strength in her expression. "You don't have to prove anything to them," he said gently. She smiled softly. "I know. But I want to show them anyway. Not because of their words, but because this is my home now. And I want to be part of it." Evan felt a warmth in his chest. Maya wasn't just saying it to sound strong. She meant it. He could see in her eyes that she was ready to face whatever challenges came their way. That night, as they sat on the porch with cups of warm tea, the sky above them filled with stars, Maya kept thinking about the land around her, the work it would require, and the life she was about to step into. It was nothing like her old life in the city. But something about the ranch felt right. She imagined herself learning new things, helping Evan, growing stronger, and becoming someone the town wouldn't expect. She didn't want revenge or attention. She only wanted to build a life with honesty, patience, and hard work. If people called her lazy now, they would eventually see the truth with time. Evan watched her quietly, noticing how she was observing the fields and the dark outline of the barn. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. Maya smiled gently. "I'm thinking that I'm ready," she said. "Ready to learn. Ready to help. Ready to work. I may not know everything yet, but I'm not afraid." The wind rustled the grass, as if agreeing with her. Evan reached over and held her hand. "We'll do it together," he said. Maya nodded. Together, from that moment on. Her mind was set. The words spoken at the wedding would not define her. She would define herself with her actions. She would learn the ranch work. One step at a time. She would become a partner Evan could rely on. She would show the town that she was far from lazy. She didn't need to announce it or make a big statement. She only needed to begin. And that night, under the quiet sky, Maya decided that she would prove her strength not by arguing or defending herself, but by building a life with her own hands, starting with the ranch that now belonged to both of them. The first morning on the ranch came earlier than Maya expected. She had set an alarm, but Evan's routine didn't need one. Before the sun even touched the sky, he was already awake, quietly moving around the room to get ready. Maya opened her eyes slowly and saw him pulling on his boots. "You don't have to wake up yet," Evan said softly when he noticed her staring. But Maya sat up anyway. "I want to," she said. "If this is our life now, I want to start it properly." Evan smiled a little. He didn't argue. He simply nodded and waited for her to get dressed. The morning air was cool when they stepped outside. Maya hugged her arms around herself as a breeze moved across the land. Everything looked different in the early light. The fences, the barn, the pasture, almost like a painting that wasn't fully finished. Evan handed her a warm cup of tea he had made earlier. "This helps," he said. She took a sip and felt the warmth settle in her chest. Then, without wasting time, Evan began showing her the morning routine. They walked toward the barn first. Maya wasn't used to walking so far before breakfast, but she didn't complain. When Evan opened the barn door, a strong natural smell filled the air. It wasn't terrible, just unfamiliar. Maya tried not to react. Evan glanced at her and said gently, "You'll get used to it." "I will," she said, and she meant it. The first task was feeding the animals. Evan showed her how to scoop the feed, how much to give, and how to be calm around the livestock. She watched closely, repeating everything the way he did it. The work felt heavier than it looked. The buckets weren't light, and carrying them back and forth made her arms ache. But Maya kept going. She didn't rush or complain. Instead, she focused on understanding each small part of the job. After feeding the animals, Evan showed her how to replace the water in the troughs. She pushed the hose into the tank and waited as the water filled. The hose was old, and sometimes it sprayed in odd directions. At one point, the water splashed onto Maya's clothes, soaking her side. She gasped softly from the cold. Evan quickly stepped forward. "You okay?" Maya laughed lightly. "Just a bit cold. But it's fine." And she kept working. When the chickens made loud noises behind her, she turned to look. One of them flapped its wings suddenly, startling her so much that she stepped back and accidentally dropped the bucket. Feed scattered across the ground. Evan hurried over. "Don't worry," he said calmly. "This happens all the time." Maya nodded, but her cheeks warmed with embarrassment. Still, she bent down immediately and started gathering what she could. Evan joined her, and together they cleaned it up. By the time the sun rose fully into the sky, Maya was sweating, dusty, and tired. Her hands were sore from gripping heavy tools, and her legs felt weak. Evan looked at her with concern. "You can take a break," he offered. "You don't have to do everything in one day." But Maya shook her head. "I want to learn," she said. "Show me more." Evan admired her determination, but he didn't want to overwhelm her, so he paced the lessons carefully. He taught her how to check the fences for loose boards, how to spot signs that an animal needed attention, and how to organize tools in the shed. He showed her how to tie simple knots, how to carry wooden planks safely, and how to use basic tools. Some tasks were simple, others were confusing. But Maya stayed patient with herself, practicing until she understood. She didn't pretend to know something. She didn't. Every time she struggled, she would quietly say, "Let me try again." Evan liked that about her. During the first few weeks, the town kept gossiping. Whenever Maya went with Evan to buy supplies, people stared. Some whispered. Some smiled politely but with doubt in their eyes. A few made comments loud enough for her to hear. "She won't make it. She looks too tired already. She's not built for ranch life." Maya heard everything, but she didn't let it touch her heart. She remembered why she was here to build a life with Evan, not to win approval from strangers. Still, it wasn't easy. The mornings were cold, the afternoons hot, and the work continuous. Every day brought something new, and not all of it went smoothly. Maya made mistakes, sometimes small, sometimes noticeable. Once, she forgot to latch a gate properly, and a young calf wandered out into the field. It didn't go far, but Evan had to guide it back. Maya apologized repeatedly, feeling guilty. But Evan reassured her. "Mistakes happen," he said. "Even people who lived here all their lives make them. You're learning fast." His kindness motivated her even more. Little by little, she improved. Her hands grew stronger. Her steps became more confident. She learned to lift heavy objects by using her knees instead of her back. She learned how to keep balance while walking over uneven ground. She learned when to be gentle and when to be firm. She began waking up before Evan sometimes, already dressed and ready to start the day. She started remembering tasks without being reminded. Slowly, she became part of the routine, not just an observer. One morning, when the wind was sharp and the sky was cloudy, Evan watched her from a distance as she carried 2 buckets. He noticed how she didn't stop to rest, how her expression stayed calm, and how she moved with purpose. A warm feeling spread through him. He had always believed in her, but now she was proving something even greater to herself. Maya found a sense of satisfaction in the work. It was tiring, yes, but also grounding. She liked feeling the earth under her boots, the fresh air filling her lungs, and the honest effort of each day. She liked seeing progress, even if small. The cleaner barn, the repaired fence, the organized tools. the animals responding better to her presence, and she liked working alongside Evan. They didn't talk constantly during chores, but their teamwork felt natural. When she needed help, he was there. When he needed something, she understood without him saying it. Their bond deepened quietly, through shared effort, rather than words. One afternoon, Maya was sweeping the porch when Mrs. Howell, an older neighbor, stopped by. She had been one of the people who doubted Maya the most. But today, she looked different. Less judgmental. More thoughtful. "You've been working hard," Mrs. Howell said, watching Maya sweep. Maya smiled politely. "I'm trying my best." Mrs. Howell nodded slowly. "I see that." She paused. Not everyone from the city would choose this life. Maya kept sweeping, her smile gentle. "I chose Evan," she said simply. "And the ranch is part of him. Changer. I chose Evan. Changer co's. Changer." Mrs. Howell studied her for a moment, then walked away without another word. It wasn't exactly praise, but it was the first time someone from the town acknowledged her effort. Over time, a few others began noticing too. Some would greet her more warmly at the store. Some would ask Evan how Maya was adjusting. With genuine curiosity, instead of rude assumptions. The gossip didn't die completely. But it softened. Still, Maya didn't work to impress them. She worked because she believed in contributing to the place she now called home. Each day, she learned something new. Each day, she grew stronger. Each day, she built a small piece of trust, not only with the town, but with the ranch itself. One evening, after a long, tiring day, Maya stood outside looking at the vast land before her. The sky glowed orange as the sun dipped behind the hills. Evan came to stand beside her. "You did a lot today," he said. "So did you," she replied. He looked at her hands, rougher now, but steady. "You're doing more than anyone expected." Maya smiled softly. "Even more than I expected," she admitted. "But I like this life. It's simple and honest." Evan nodded with quiet pride. "You're becoming part of the ranch." Maya's heart warmed. That was all she wanted: to help, to grow, to belong. And though the town still whispered now and then, the truth was becoming clear. The lazy bride was anything but lazy. She was determined. She was learning. She was becoming stronger every day. And the best part of her journey was still ahead. As the weeks turned into months, Maya began to feel more confident on the ranch. She no longer felt like a guest who was trying to fit in. She felt like someone who truly belonged. The town had stopped watching her every move. And Evan trusted her completely with the daily tasks. But Maya wasn't satisfied with simply keeping the ranch running. She wanted to help it grow. One morning, she walked outside and looked at the barn roof. She had noticed for days that several wooden boards were loose, and a few shingles were missing. The last storm had made the roof even weaker. If rain came again, water could drip inside and damage the stored supplies. Evan had planned to fix it someday, but he never found the time. Maya decided that someday could be today. She waited until Evan finished feeding the animals and said, "I want to try fixing the barn roof." Evan paused, surprised. "That's a big job," he said gently. "I can do it later. You don't have to climb up there." Maya gave a soft smile. "I know I don't have to, but I want to help." Evan studied her face and saw seriousness in her eyes. He didn't want her to get hurt, but he also knew she had grown stronger and more capable. "Okay," he said after a moment. "But we'll do it together." They carried a ladder, nails, boards, and a hammer to the barn. Evan climbed first and made sure the roof was stable. Then Maya carefully followed him. The height made her nervous at first, but she breathed slowly and kept her focus on the work. They spent hours removing old boards, replacing damaged sections, and securing the new shingles. The sun warmed their backs. The wind brushed past them, and birds flew overhead. Maya worked with steady hands, feeling proud every time a nail held firm. By late afternoon, the roof looked strong again. Evan stood back and admired the result. "You did great," he said. "We did," she replied. Together, they had repaired something important. And the sense of accomplishment filled her with quiet joy. That repair was only the beginning. Over the next weeks, Maya noticed many parts of the ranch that needed attention. She made a list and showed it to Evan. It included repairing old gates, organizing the storage shed, replacing worn-out tools, and cleaning areas that had been ignored for years. Evan looked at the list with raised eyebrows. "You want to do all this?" "Yes," Maya said. "If we want the ranch to grow, we have to start somewhere." He nodded slowly. "You're right." They began working through the list one task at a time. Maya organized tools in the shed, placing everything in its own space so they could easily find what they needed. She swept the dusty corners, cleared old boxes, and labeled shelves. When Evan walked inside later, he looked around in surprise. "It looks like a new place," he said. Maya laughed lightly. "It was too messy before. It needed attention." They tackled bigger tasks too. Together, they cleaned an entire field where old wooden posts had fallen years ago. They carried them away, stacked them neatly, and cleared the land so new grass could grow. Maya also helped Evan check the water pipes, replacing the ones that leaked. Every task required effort, but Maya worked with determination. She didn't rush. She didn't complain. She wanted the ranch to become stronger and healthier, just like she was becoming. The real challenge came when they discovered a section of the pasture where the ground was too dry. Evan explained that without better water flow, the grass would never grow well there. Without grass, the animals had limited space to graze. Maya thought about it for a long time. Then she said, "Let's try planting new grass and improving the water line." Evan looked thoughtful. "It will take a lot of work." Maya smiled gently. "We can handle it." They spent days preparing the field. They removed old roots, broke the hard soil, and spread fresh seeds across the ground. They fixed the water pipe that ran along the edge of the pasture, making sure the field would stay moist. Maya knelt in the dirt, her hands becoming muddy and rough, but she didn't mind. She liked seeing the land change because of their effort. Little by little, the field improved. The soil softened. Small, green sprouts appeared. The sight of new growth filled Maya with hope. Nature was responding to their care. During all this hard work, the town took notice again. People driving by sometimes slowed their vehicles, watching Maya lift heavy bags of seeds or repair wooden fences. Those who once mocked her now stared with disbelief. One afternoon, Mr. Dalton, a neighbor known for speaking his mind, stopped his truck near the ranch. He leaned out the window and called, "Is that really you, Maya?" She stood up, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Yes," she said, with a warm smile. He shook his head in amazement. "You're working harder than most folks around here." Maya didn't brag or show off. She simply said, "I just want to help the ranch." Mr. Dalton nodded approvingly. "You're doing more than helping." After he drove away, Maya continued working, but inside her heart felt lighter. People were beginning to see her differently, not because she explained herself, but because her actions spoke louder than words. The ranch started to change. The barn looked stronger. The fences stood straighter. The fields grew greener. The animals seemed happier. Everything felt alive again, filled with new energy. But it wasn't just the ranch that was growing. Maya and Evan's connection grew too. They talked more during the evenings, sharing stories, plans, and dreams. Maya told Evan about her childhood in the city, how she used to imagine a life surrounded by nature. Evan told her about his parents, the memories he carried, and how lonely the ranch had felt before she arrived. "You've brought life back here," he said one evening as they watched the sunset. Maya shook her head gently. "We did it together," she said. "But thank you for trusting me." He smiled, knowing she deserved the credit she refused to take. Not every day was easy, though. There were setbacks. One day, a strong windstorm arrived unexpectedly. The wind tossed branches across the land, scattered leaves everywhere, and pushed against the half-repaired fence until it leaned dangerously. Maya and Evan hurried outside to secure everything they could. They tied the loose boards, cleared what the wind blew down, and checked the animals to make sure they were safe. By the time the wind settled, they were exhausted. But nothing was broken, because they had worked together with calm and care. Another challenge came when their water pump slowed down. Without proper water flow, the entire ranch could struggle. Evan tried repairing it alone at first, but Maya insisted on helping. They spent hours checking the pipes, replacing small parts, and testing the pump over and over again. Finally, the water began flowing strongly again, spraying a bright, steady stream that sparkled in the sunlight. Maya laughed in relief. Evan looked at her and said, "I couldn't have fixed it without you." Maya shook her head. "We fixed it together. Every day, every task, every repair deepened their teamwork. And through it all, Maya's strength kept growing. She learned how to carry wooden boards without losing balance. She learned how to plant seeds with care. She learned how to use tools she never knew existed before. She learned how to look at a problem and find a solution calmly. The town slowly realized that the lazy bride was anything but lazy. She was hardworking, thoughtful, and willing to do whatever it took to build a good life. People who once doubted her now greeted her with respect. A few even asked her for advice about their own gardens or small repairs. But Maya didn't let the attention change her. She stayed humble, focused, and steady. One evening, as she and Evan walked along the edge of the ranch, they looked at all they had accomplished. The barn was strong. The fields were green. The fences were secure. The animals rested peacefully. Maya breathed deeply, feeling the fresh air fill her lungs. "It's growing," she whispered. Evan nodded. "Because of you." She smiled softly. "Because of us." The ranch, once struggling and tired, now stood alive and full of promise. And Maya, who had once been called a lazy bride by people who didn't know her heart, had silently rebuilt almost everything with her own hands. She didn't need applause. She didn't need praise. She only needed the knowledge that she had done something meaningful, something real. And the town, little by little, was beginning to understand the truth. The best proof of her strength wasn't words. It was the ranch itself, standing tall because she chose to care for it. Months had passed, and the ranch looked completely different from when Maya first arrived. Everything seemed to have more life in it. The animals were healthier, the fields were greener, and even the old wooden fences stood straighter than before. Evan often said the ranch felt happier, almost as if it was smiling again. And the truth was, Maya felt the same way. Her hands were stronger now, her steps more confident. She had learned how to work in the cold morning air, in the heat of the afternoon, and even in unexpected weather. She had learned not only how to complete tasks, but also how to think ahead. She began planning, repairing, planting, and improving parts of the ranch on her own. She had grown into someone she never knew she could be. But her biggest challenge came in the form of a surprise, one that the whole town would witness. It started when Evan received a letter inviting him to a town meeting. The local council wanted to choose someone to manage a community grazing project. The land was shared by several ranchers, but it needed someone responsible to handle the schedule, repairs, and water distribution. It was an important job, and only those with a good reputation would be chosen. Evan didn't think much about it, but Maya did. The town had once judged her harshly. Now, she felt that this meeting was her silent test. People had seen her work, but now they would see something bigger, whether her efforts had truly helped the ranch thrive. A day before the meeting, Evan said, "You don't have to come if you don't want to. These things can get long and boring." Maya smiled. "I want to go," she said softly. "We built the ranch together. I want to be there." Evan nodded, happy to have her by his side. The next morning, they left early for town. Maya wore simple clothes, clean jeans, a soft shirt, and her boots. She tied her hair back and left her face natural. She didn't want to dress fancy. She wanted to show the town exactly who she had become. A rancher's partner. A hard-working woman. Someone proud of her journey. When they reached the meeting hall, people were already gathered. Maya felt their eyes on her the moment she walked in. But this time, their expressions were different. They weren't watching to judge, they were watching with curiosity, maybe even respect. Maya held her head steady and walked with calm steps beside Evan. The meeting began with the usual announcements. Then the council members discussed the grazing project. Some people volunteered themselves, naming their years of experience. A few ranchers argued politely about why they should manage the land. It went on for a long time, until one council member stood up and said, "We should also consider who has shown the most improvement this year." There was a quiet murmur in the room. The council members looked around before one of them continued, "Evan's ranch has changed more in these past months than we've seen in years." People turned toward Evan, and then, naturally, their eyes shifted to Maya. She felt her heartbeat quicken. She looked down, then gently lifted her chin. Mr. Dalton, the neighbor who once doubted her, stood up. "I've seen them working," he said. "That ranch wouldn't look the way it does without both of them." Mrs. Howell raised her hand next. "Maya, you've done a fine job. The whole town can see it." Hearing her name spoken with respect made Maya's chest tighten with emotion. She didn't cry, but her eyes softened. The council asked Evan to speak. He stepped forward and said, "Maya and I work together. I trust her with every part of the ranch. I trust her more than anyone I've ever known." Then he surprised Maya by stepping aside and saying, "If you want to know how the ranch changed, she can tell you better than I can." For a moment, Maya froze. She hadn't expected to speak. The room fell silent. Every eye rested on her. She took a small breath and walked forward slowly. "I don't have big words," she said quietly, "but I can tell you the truth." The room listened closely. "When I first came here, I didn't know anything about ranch work. People thought I couldn't do it. And maybe they were right at the time. But I wanted to learn. I wanted to help. I wanted this place to grow." She paused, then continued with calm strength. "The ranch taught me many things. It taught me patience. It taught me how to work with my hands. It taught me that even if people doubt you, you can still rise if your heart is steady." A few people nodded softly. She added, "Everything we fixed together. Everything we planted with hope. And everything that grew, it grew because we cared." That's all I have to say. The room was quiet for several moments. Not awkwardly quiet, but respectfully quiet. Then someone began clapping. Slowly, more people joined in. Some stood. Some smiled warmly. The applause grew, filling the hall with the sound of appreciation, not for a speech full of fancy words, but for a woman who had proven her worth through actions. Evan looked at her with pride, his eyes soft and warm. The council announced their decision soon after. Evan was chosen to manage the grazing project, and everyone knew the role belonged to both of them, because the ranch's success was a shared effort. On the way back home, Maya sat beside Evan in the truck, looking out the window at the long roads and wide fields. "You were amazing in there," Evan said. Maya smiled shyly. "I was nervous." "You didn't look nervous," he replied. "You looked strong." She laughed softly. "Maybe I'm becoming strong." Evan reached over and gently held her hand. "You already are." When they reached the ranch, something unexpected happened. A few of the townspeople who had attended the meeting had followed them to the ranch not to gossip, but to help. They offered tools, seeds, and supplies for the new project. "We want to support you both," Mr. Dalton said. "You earned it." Maya felt warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time since she had arrived, she felt the whole town standing with her instead of against her. Days passed, and the new project began. Maya worked alongside Evan and the other ranchers, helping organize schedules, clearing the land, and preparing new grazing areas. Her confidence grew even more, and her name, once whispered with doubt, began to be spoken with admiration. One evening, after finishing a long day of organizing the field, Maya stood at the top of a small hill overlooking the ranch. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink. The wind carried the scent of fresh grass. Evan walked up beside her and placed an arm around her shoulders. "You built this," he said. "We built it. she corrected gently. He smiled. The town sees you differently now. Maya shook her head softly. It doesn't matter how they see me. What matters is what we built together, and how it feels inside. Evan nodded. And how does it feel? Maya looked out over the land, strong fences, healthy fields, steady animals, and a ranch glowing under the sunset. It feels like home, she whispered. Evan pressed a soft kiss on her forehead. That's all I ever wanted. Maya smiled, her heart full. She thought back to the day she first heard those painful words, lazy bride. Those words once hurt her. But now they felt distant, almost unreal, because she knew the truth. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't weak. She wasn't a burden. She was a builder, a partner, a woman who had turned a struggling ranch into a growing one, a woman who earned respect through quiet strength and steady effort. The town no longer used that old label. Instead, they spoke her name with pride. And as she stood there beside the man she loved, watching the ranch she helped create, Maya felt something she once only hoped for, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and a deep, peaceful joy. Her journey had not been about proving others wrong. It had been about discovering who she truly was,